right skill, it's useless. However, this was the blessed blacksmith hammer. Its rating was epic, its durability was over 300, its attack power was within 50 and 70, and it was the immediate blacksmith craftsmanship tool. Furthermore, while creating the item using her blessed blacksmith hammer, she thinks that's why she will borrow his skills. Then she smiles and looks toward her with her glowing right eye skill observation. She looked toward him as he hammered the road, sending her magic wave toward him. As she stood there, she was looking toward him about his skill and duplicating it. Suddenly, Yongwoo noticed that she was staring at him. He turned his head to look toward her, surprisingly asking why she was staring at him like that. As she was staring at him, she got the notification that she couldn't analyze the target skill and the level of skill observation was too low. Reading the notification, she clenches her teeth, thinking, what? Then she presses her lips and sweats, considering it is impossible because her skill observation is at level 7. She even duplicated an advanced blacksmith skill when it was at level 5, and then she asked herself if it meant he was a master blacksmith. The top-ranking blacksmith is only at intermediate himself. Her skill would succeed. While thinking this, she gets speechless and then shocked, wondering about his epic class. After this, she folded her arms, thinking that it could be Agnes Katz and she were the only ones with an epic class. She stood there still thinking while he was busy making the items, and he, with all his concentration, was producing the items. She stands there still, looking toward him, and, surprisingly, asks herself, is he a user with a unique class? After this, she turns her head and looks toward Valmont and Rabbit sitting on the throne and thinks that whatever he is, she is finished if things don't change. As she looks toward Valmont, he angrily looks toward her. After this, she stands down and calls Rabbit. He comes down to listen to her. He asks her what is the matter, and she nervously replies, asking the man has a mentor right. Make him participate in this game, Rabbit replies, asking to change the rules halfway through. However, she steps ahead and stops there, then turns her head and clenches her teeth, answering him to deal with that himself. He said that they had to win this competition. The rabbit stood behind her, stayed silent, and then replied after a minute that she understood. After this, Rabbit goes to the instructor host and starts telling himself something. Youngwoo notices them talking and turns his head angrily, thinking that something is happening. Furthermore, the instructor host raised his voice angrily. Sir Khan, please come to the stage. This is Miss Arena's request. Khan, sitting among the audience, is surprised while the audience is too. Then, the host raises his voice and says the mentor should participate with his disciple. The audience at Arena's back was cheering her that 2 vs 1. Arena's incredible while she stood on the competition ground, folding her arms angrily. However, Khan gets there in the competition ground and Youngwoo stands there and looks toward Arena angrily. Stand there, Youngwoo angrily says she is looking down on him and Khan stands behind him, pressing his arm, and says let them work together since she has requested it. After this, Khan, looking toward Youngwoo, says he is thankful to her since it allows him to work with him, a blacksmith he respects, and gives him a chance to fight for his gloriously smithy. Youngwoo turned his head to look toward Khan, answering all right, let's get her off of her high horse. However, both of them start their work creating items, and Arena stands behind them and looks at them working together, thinking this is perfect. Then she looks toward Khan, thinking he is the one she has been aiming for, and allows her to borrow some of his amazing techniques. Therefore, with her magic skill, she started analyzing Khan's blacksmith's craftsmanship skills as she was analyzing it. She gets the notification that she has successfully studied the advanced blacksmith's craftsmanship level 2 skill, and she has successfully duplicated the advanced blacksmith's craftsmanship level 2 skill. Her eyes were glowing, and then another notification appeared that she could use the advanced blacksmith's craftsmanship skill once. While analyzing the skill, her eye was glowing. She thought she was good. She got the skill as long as their skill levels were similar. It all comes down to luck that won't change even if he is master ranked. As they both were working together, she also started her work, and then, while hammering the road, she thought this game was still ongoing. However, there still were cheering Arena, and she was doing her work. While at her back, both Yaunlu and Khan, together making an item, turned their heads and looked at them both. After this, she thinks they are still hammering the blade's outline while setting the iron bar. How foolish of them, and she has already finished forging the blade. She smiles, thinking as long as Lady Luck is on her side, she will win this game. On the other side, Youngwoo, while hammering the blade, feels good. This is going well. Master Khan's concentration is also incredible. Meanwhile, he gets the notification that the legendary blacksmith's patience skill has activated his health defense, and his talent has increased by 200 for 1 hour. Therefore, making the item Youngwoo sweat and smile, thinking of iron and fire, he can perfectly feel every sight. However, after the hard work, Youngwoo, while holding the iron sword in tongs, smiles and thinks this is the moment the iron and fire become one. Meanwhile, he gets notified that the legendary blacksmith breath skill has been activated, and the item stats have increased. Valmont and Rabbit stand up, staring at Youngwoo. Rabbit angrily looks toward Youngwoo and gets speechless. While on Youngwoo's side, he and Khan were smiling while doing their work successfully. Khan smiles and stands beside him, saying that he is honored to be part of the creation of this masterpiece. Youngwoo laughs and replies there is still something else left, then shows Khan the horn. Youngwoo says it's the monitor horn they will use for the hilt. It costs gold and asks him if he knows. Youngwoo, looking toward Irina, was speechless when she raised her dagger and showed it to them all sitting there. And the host announced that the participant Irina's dagger has been completed. Its appearance is as marvelous as the creation of an amazing masterpiece produced in less than 3 hours. Youngwoo, looking toward Irina and her sword, thinks he doesn't want to admit it, but it's remarkable. That kid wasn't bragging. She is skilled. After this, the hosts announce, asking now if they shall display its characteristics, and then the huge panel appears before the audience about Irina's dagger. However, when presenting the dagger panel before the audience, the host raises his voice, saying even its features are unbelievable. The results are clear. Irina won the game, while this dagger was produced using an excellent blacksmith's delicate skills and superior aesthetics. Its lethal beauty can sometimes steal the opponent's heart, has a certain probability of bewitching the opponent when used to attack, and its durability quickly decreases. Moreover, the user restriction was level 100+, agility was plus 200, intelligence was plus 30, and it was intermediate dagger mastery. Youngwoo is staring at the horn and holding it, thinking don't be disturbed. Concentrate on his dagger, and his dagger only. However, Valmont, sitting on his throne, looking toward Irina's dagger, says incredible, a dagger that can bewitch people. Rabbit stands behind him and replies yes, it's remarkable. On Youngwoo's side stands there staring at the horn, and Khan stands behind him, saying that, amazingly, she can rival him at her age. Then, looking toward Youngwoo, he asks, but it poses no problem. Youngwoo replies that he just finished crafting his, and is worried that the audience might have a heart attack after seeing this. As he was completing the production of his item, a strong gust of wind blew, and the main door of that place opened while the guards, holding their weapons in their hands, ran toward them. Sees this, Youngwoo and Khan are surprised, and then one of the guards places his sword on Youngwoo's shoulder and shouts he is the sinner. Youngwoo stands there shocked when the guard, placing the sword on his shoulder, shouts they have received information that he is working with the terrorist Hiryo. Then, the guard, raising his voice, orders the other guards to arrest him immediately. Sees this, Khan shouts, asking what he says. Hiryo got caught, while the villagers behind Khan also got shocked. Meanwhile, Valmont stands up and steps ahead to come down to the ground, saying, sigh, what a pity. Khan looks up toward Valmont, thinking he is the one behind this, and then he abuses him, thinking he knows he can't win, and mobilizes the guards. The guards caught Youngwoo by his arms and dragged him toward the sail. While he turns his head and looks toward Rabbit, he shouts, asking why he would work with Hiryo to let him go. Rabbit stands behind, silently watching this all, and then he looks toward Youngwoo's item on the table glowing. He has seen all sorts of items for 20 years while working in the company. But this is an incredible item that Irina's dagger can't rival, and it's their loss. Meanwhile, Valmont comes down and stands behind Rabbit. He looks toward the sword that Youngwoo forges and says they almost had the table turned on them by one amazing guy. This is an outstanding item, and Rabbit stands ahead, turns his head, looks toward Valmont, and says, sir. Then he asks, so he also realizes it, did he order the guards himself? They will lose the public support if they announce a winner in this situation. Valmont, with anger, replies that the audience will be more than convinced if Irina's dagger wins, then asks if he thinks he will give up on that smithy. Then he orders the rabbit to take that dagger with them. They can't have its properties revealed, and the rabbit replies understood. As the guards were taking Youngwoo toward the cell, he was screaming, while Rabbit stood behind him, looked toward him, and thought, with those skills, it wouldn't be far-fetched to call him the continent's greatest blacksmith. His name is Grid. After this, Arena came to the table where the items were lying, and she stared Yaogmu's item size, asking about this amazing item. If they had finished the game, she would have lost no. Rabbit replies to Miss Arena, and a secret conversation happens between the two. After some time, Arena looks toward Rabbit. However, the game ends with the audience's support on her side. She has accomplished the company's goal, so she will have to receive her reward. Rabbit replies very well, he will keep his promise. However, standing there, Arena got the notification that her quest had cleared, and then she blushed and excitedly made a fist with both her hands. After this, she receives another notification that she has acquired 1500 gold, the title competitor, the stat fighting spirit, the stat luck, and the skill of rolling dice. However, in the fighting spirit section, it was written that the lower the health, the greater the attack. His power, mental state, and stat points can't be distributed to this stat. In the luck section, it was written that the likelihood of a lucky phenomenon will increase. Furthermore, in the rolling dice section, it was reported that rolling dice and a phenomenon will occur depending on the roll number. However, reading that notification, she thinks everything else is good, but this one could be better. It's completely random, but it's still better than that quest she failed last time. After this, Arena looks toward Youngwoo, whom the guards are taking toward the dungeon cell, and says to Rabbit that the man acted like he was wronged as he was taken away. Rabbit, looking aside, replies that what has happened has already happened. To hear this, she turns her head and angrily looks toward him. Thinking he had the worst personality ever, she wanted to know his true identity as she stared at Rabbit. Stand ahead of her, and he probably didn't think he would face an ordinary civilian in a smithy contest either. Hearing Rabbit's words, she heatedly stares at him. Then Rabbit tells her that her basics were crude, but she had the same movements as Khan. Then he asked her if she had some coping skills. She made him think he realized this NPC. After this, Rabbit steps ahead, saying one day, the mural company will get prosecuted by Earlstein for its greed. That's why he is considering leaving the company and giving himself another chance at success. Furthermore, Khan's smithy could create that opportunity. That's what he has learned from watching Youngwoo and his skills. Then Rabbit says that when Youngwoo's connections and resources become vast, he will rival small and medium-sized companies with his crafting skills. However, Arena stands there surprisingly, looking toward the Rabbit, thinking even the top merchants rankers. Beige is just the owner of a small company, so Youngwoo is that amazing of a man. Then Rabbit turns his head and looks toward him, saying there is a prop and asks if she can rescue that man. Hearing this, she gets speechless and shocked at the same time and thinks it's a quest. Standing there, she gets the notification that she helps Rabbit's job-seeking plan, helps him rescue Youngwoo, and causes the downfall of the Miro Company and Winston Lord. If she clears this condition, she will get 5,000 gold, and if she fails, her level will decrease by -2 Rabbit deaths, and all quests associated with Rabbit will be permanently raised. Then they ask her if she will accept this quest, and she stands there smiling, thinking that Youngwoo boy as soon as she gets involved with him. She got a title and an S-grade quest. She answered thoughtfully that very well she shall help him. However, in Khan's smithy, the villagers gathered there, and one of them started distributing weapons among the Roman 6, asking if everyone had one. Then she raised his voice, saying that they needed to act themselves since even Hirio had been arrested. Now, everyone there had taken their weapons from him. Khan stands there among them, looking toward them all, saying thanks to everyone. They can't leave everything in Hirio and Youngwoo's hands. They all were enthusiastic about their next step, and Khan and all were holding the weapons in their hands, slogging to protect their future. This time, they will find freedom with their own hands. Meanwhile, Valmont and his guard arrive there in the smithy. The guard throws the arrow toward them, and the arrow stabs one of their backs. He falls while everyone there is surprised to see this. Valmont stands at the door with his guard angrily looking toward them, saying he knows it is a rebellion. They all turn to look back and are shocked to see it's Valmont and his people. See him there. Khan shouts and abuses Valmont. Then he raises his voice, saying he manipulated that game and tried to take over this village. Then he angrily asks Valmont if he does not fear the people's anger. While people of the village stand behind him holding their weapons, they get alert and look toward Valmont angrily. However, Valmont looks toward his companion, Philipson, who stands beside him wearing armor. He sighs and asks how this looks. Then Valmont asks even the Lord must fear these rebels. Philipson angrily looks toward villagers and replies to Valmont that he is correct. They must subjugate them immediately. However, Valmont clenches his teeth, looks toward the villagers and orders him to hand over the smithy and get captured obediently, even though he wants to end this and go to bed. Looking toward Valmont, Khan angrily calls him the demon. Valmont orders his guard to arrest the rebellion's ringleader Khan, and they will move toward Khan to stop him. Replies, "Yes, sir." However, at night, Hiryu was in the dungeon cell, and the torch lit on the wall was flickering. While Hiryu's hands were tied, he was sitting on the ground, leaning against the wall with his eyes closed, and thinking, where is this, and how many days has it been since someone got him out? However, Mongolian branch manager Park Yoon-hyuk was in the conference room with his company people, as they all were watching this on the supercomputer screen before them. Seeing Hiryu in the dungeon cell, Park Yoon-hyuk says Hiryu's electroencephalogram is too unstable at this rate. They can't guarantee Ulunbatter's health. Everyone in the conference starts looking toward Park Yoon-hyuk, and he, looking toward the supercomputer screen before them, says things may get dangerous if they don't log him out immediately. Then he thoughtfully says, but he has spent 48 hours in real time already. They now have to enter the stage of protecting and helping his effort. Hearing the manager's words, everyone in the conference room turns and looks toward the park. Yoon-hyuk replies it's too dangerous. Even his only potential rescuer Youngwoo was arrested. Then, one of the men wearing glasses adds his point, asking if he will leave the company's fate in the hands of a low-level user like Youngwoo. Then he looks toward the manager and says the rescue probability must be below 9% now, and the manager replies to him. However, due to Youngwoo's arrest, he is close to Hiryu in the dungeons now. And there is still hope to say he thinks even though this is a desperate moment, he believes that something will happen. He may be a low-level user with irredeemable greed, but his persistence is real, and he will surely do something. Youngwoo. After this, the manager, Park Yoon-hyuk, looking toward the supercomputer screen says, let's bet the remaining 2 hours on him. However, in the Winston Castle dungeons, they question Youngwoo while his hands and arms are tied, and they make him sit on a chair. A soldier, Valmont, and a trusted man, Leo, shout at Youngwoo, saying to give him the name of the one who requested Hiryu, and Youngwoo replies, what a joke. Hearing this, Leo puts his hands on the table before him. He looks into Youngwoo's eyes and abuses him, shouting if he doesn't answer his question, he will be immediately executed. In return, Youngwoo also shouts and abuses him, answering he doesn't care to kill him already if he is going to do it, and in the end, he is the one manipulating everything. Just kill him. However, Leo takes out his sword, abusing Youngwoo, and Youngwoo sits there think no matter what he does, he should die. If he stays imprisoned and loses the competition, Khan might die from the grief of losing the smithy. But if this madman kills him, he will respawn and return to Khan's side to kill him. However, Leo takes out his sword and sets it to attack Youngwoo. Also, the soldier stands beside him, puts the gag in his mouth, and binds it tightly from behind. However, the guard stands behind Youngwoo, holding that gag's belt from the back, which he puts in his mouth so that he can't speak. The guard holding the belt tells Leo to calm down. He knows that he has an immortal body. Leo replies and orders the guard to take Youngwoo to solitary confinement, so he will tell them in no time. Hearing this, Youngwoo angrily looks toward the guard, thinking what? Youngwoo got scared, thinking this was not good. If he gets imprisoned, Khan will be in danger. Besides, he can't even play the game if he stays in prison. Then, looking toward them, he thinks he will tell them everything, so he takes off this gag and apologizes to Khan in his mind. However, the guard stands there, turns his head, looks toward the soldier there, and orders them to keep Youngwoo locked up until he is willing to talk. Youngwoo sits behind the stool angrily, thinking he is already there. His hand and mouth were tightly tied, and he couldn't move and speak. Moreover, they throw him in the solitary room and lock the door from the outside, and then the guard looks inside through the bar window and shouts at Youngwoo to shut it. He can only get out once he talks. While Youngwoo's mouth was gagged with the iron rod, he angrily looked toward the guard lying there on the floor. After this, he gets up. He wants to speak, but his mouth is gagged, and he gets notified that the quest Apostle of Justice has been generated. Then, another notification appeared, and it was written that the Apostle of Justice rescued Hiryu within 7 hours. If he cleared this reward, he would get the title of Apostle of Justice. A linked quest where he can partner up with Hiryu, and in the Apostle of Justice section, it was written open the courage stat. All stats are 10+. If he fails in this quest, his level will decrease to -2, and he will obtain the title of coward. However, after reading this notification, he stands there and thinks, where has he seen this reward? It's from the quest Hiryo revealed to him. Then, another notification appears before him. He read that notification thinking, but either way, he got captured as well. He can't rescue him in 7 hours. There is even a penalty if he fails. What a crappy quest. He is not doing it. After this, he starts crying when he gets another notification that he can't refuse the quest accepting the quest. However, while reading that notification, he thought, Inks, why did he do this to him? Yaoganwu sat in the solitary room with a sad face. He thinks 3 hours have already passed. He knew there was no way such luck and fortune would come to him for free, sitting in the dark on his knees with his head against the wall and weeping, thinking he had never found nor picked up a single cent for 26 years. He should have known when he gained the legendary class and wanted to punch the goddess of luck in the gut. As he was crying there, suddenly, he heard his name. Surprised, someone from the other side of the wall started calling him his name. Surprised, he sat there, lying his head against the wall, and the person who was calling him was nobody else but Irina. She leaned against the wall, softly, calling his name and taking care that no one could see her anywhere. While calling his name, she asks where he is, and he gets up and moves toward the bar window, thinking the voice Irina, why is that kid there? Then, while looking out of the bar window, he thinks he doesn't care right now. She is his only hope. Irina stands outside the solitary room and asks herself just where is that unpleasant man. He stands inside the isolated room angrily and thinks of that shitty idiot girl. Meanwhile, he gets notified that he has 2 hours left to complete the quest. Hearing this message, he hardly hit the bar window with his head to let her know he was standing inside, thinking time was running out and needed to get her attention. Standing there outside, finding him, as he hit his head on the bar window, she turned her head and looked toward the bar window, asking over there. She sees him, she turns and looks toward him, and he sees her there and starts crying tears of blood. She looked toward him and said he surprised her, but she finally found him. Yaoganwu stands there, wanting to speak, but he can't due to that gag. She looks toward the door lock and says she will get him out of there, so wait a bit before that. As the door was locked and she stood outside, she held the dagger before him and smiled, saying she would return it. It was something he made with painstaking effort. Youngwoo stood there blushing, thinking that the dagger he made when he saw her again was such a kind and gorgeous girl. As soon as she says she has a condition. Hearing this, he gets surprised and looks towards her. Then she laughs, saying please make her an orb. One that can contain as much magic as possible. Hearing this, he angrily looks toward her, thinking of an orb, a magic item he has never made. Why is he? But who cares? Let's agree as he stands inside and looks toward her through the bar window. She looked toward him and said one more thing. Then she angrily looked at him and pointed at him, saying don't call her a kid. She has a name, Euphemina, and call her that. Hearing this, he sweat thinking what the arena was an alias so many conditions. After this, she opens the door, and he comes out and stands outside, holding the gag and excitedly shouting he is out. She extends her hand and gives him his dagger, saying take it. Yaoganwu takes his dagger angrily, asking her why she has come to rescue him. Wait, rather than that, how did a blacksmith get in there? She stands there wearing the cloak to hide her identity so he can recognize her. As Yaoganwu asks, she turns her head and looks at him replaying that she is not a blacksmith. Surprisingly, he asked what, and she excitedly answered she had the hidden class duplicator and copied Khan's skills during the competition. Hearing this, he shouted, asking for a remote class. He heard that there were only 3 people with them, and she was one of them. After this, she steps ahead, and he angrily looks toward her, asking why she is revealing her identity to him even though she made an alias and all to hide it. She turns her head and replies because either way, they will get to know each other soon enough. Then she asks him if he has a hidden class as well, one that's at least a unique grade, and he surprisingly replies by asking if she knows but how. After this, he steps ahead toward her, asking if she likes him, and she angrily looks toward her replies and stops talking nonsense while thinking she prefers voluptuous women. Then she looks toward him, saying she doesn't know what class he has, but she has to fight properly now. Otherwise, they would both die there. Meanwhile, hundreds of soldiers holding swords and shields and wearing armor come toward them in the lane from the stairs upward. Sees this, both get scared and shout at Yaoganwu sacredly, asking her what they did to bring the whole army down with these numbers. She replies she has already dealt with more than 100 of them, and he needs to assist her to survive. Yaoganwu takes out his dagger from the scabbard, answering her he only has a single dagger on him, even if he wants to help her. After this, he raised that ideal dagger and the bright light emerged. Staring at the dagger in his hand, he thinks, it was this good of a blade. An interface appeared with the information about that dagger as it was an ideal dagger. Its rating was unique, its durability was from 100 to 200, and its attack power was more than 150. As he was staring at the dagger, a bright light in the form of a wave emerged from it, and the interface appeared before him that this was an item he had crafted, and his understanding was at 100%. Then another interface appears that penalties will be applied as he doesn't meet the requirement reduction of 20% in attack power and half of the option effects. After this, he stares at the dagger, thinking of receiving penalties. Even though he is the creator, Irian stands beside him and shouts at him, asking if he is part of the assassin series. Then she angrily looked at him, asking if it wasn't one of the restrictions for advanced dagger mastery, but wait, he also had master blacksmith skills. Then she asked him how he did that. Standing there, he presses his lips and looks at her, thinking this kid must have seen the item's details, seeing how she didn't take it. Is she truly nice? Meanwhile, a soldier arrives there to attack them. She sees this, she shouts, and it comes. Surprisingly, he looks toward her. However, the soldier started throwing sticks toward them. As one stick was about to hit Youngwoo's leg, he jumped in time and saved himself. He swung his dagger to attack them, thinking the idiots should have warned him. Youngwoo uses his wind blast magic with his dagger and attacks them. That wind blast hits the soldiers and falls them away. Sees this, Irina stands behind Clap, saying how amazing he is, and he angrily shouts, asking if she will spectate Euphemina. She smiles and opens her arms, replaying that other than rescuing him, the rest is extra work for her. Moreover, her skills are a bit costly. As he attacked the soldier with his dagger, a group of soldiers moved toward him, holding swords and shields. See this, Yaoganwu stand there and clench his teeth, saying don't be stubborn in this situation. Meanwhile, he gets the notification that he has 1 hour and 25 minutes left to complete the quest. He clenches his teeth, thinking he doesn't have time and can't face those guys alone. After this, he looks toward Euphemina, saying don't be like this. They need to save someone else, and she surprisingly asks someone else. Then she says she already saved Old Man Khan on her way there, and he surprisingly asks her if he was also arrested. However, he clenched his teeth in anger, saying that was a relief, but the one he needed to save was a guy called Hiryo. She angrily asks him who that is, and he fearfully replies that he has only met him once, so he doesn't know much either. Then she sighed and closed her eyes, saying she didn't want to get too deeply involved to save a stranger. It was excessive, he saw. At this, Youngwoo shouts. He is also tired of getting involved. Just listen to him. She is a bold kid. She gets furious and creates her magic, shouting didn't she tell him? And he clenches his teeth, asking what she makes. The magic swirls on her hand, her eyes glow, and she furiously replies not to call her a kid. However, she creates the Spear of Destruction, attacks the soldiers with her magic, and kills many of them with one blow. A huge explosion occurs, and she keeps sending her magic toward the soldiers to kill them. Youngwoo saw her magic, and was surprised as she killed many of them, while the remaining soldiers shouted to be careful, she is dangerous. At the same time, she was throwing a storm toward them to kill them. Many of them jump and save themselves from her flame storm while standing there aside, holding their swords, shouting. She saw this as she was throwing her magic wave and flame storm toward the soldier. Yaoganwu stood aside and surprisingly looked toward her, thinking it was this powerful even though she didn't chant. She can rival Aura while attacking the soldier with her magic. She stands there and says Youngwoo, she will let it slide this time since they need to save someone. As creating her magic, her eyes glow, and she says but she would love it if he didn't call her a kid. Yaoganwu fearfully smile, answering she has committed a grave sin, madam. After this, they move from there to the 3rd floor. While descending the stairs, Yaoganwu angrily asks her how far they must go. Isn't B3 the lowest floor? Irina replies that they have to go to B4. As they both descended the stairs, Yaoganwu got a notification that he had 1 hour and 10 minutes left to complete the quest. He turned his head and read the notification. Then he asked her if she couldn't Hiryo be above them. She replied she searched B1 and B2 while looking for him, and there was no such user, and she got the information that there was B4 from a trustworthy person. Yaoganwu shouts asking what he means and which way is B4, as they both step B4 while on the way. They heard the sound of someone running up the stairs, raising their voice. They headed downstairs. Everyone moved. Hearing that voice, they both turn their head, look up toward the stairs, and get scared. However, Yaoganwu runs ahead saying, "Let's go this way first." While she stands there, she notices a flower and stops there. After this, she sits on her knees and extends her hand to grab the flower, saying, "Such a beautiful flower in this dark underground area." He raises his hand toward her, shouting, "Wait, don't touch it," and she surprisingly looks toward him while extending her hand toward the flower. After this, he tells her to look ahead and that everything is connected in this corridor. After this, Yaoganwu carefully passes over the rope and says thankfully that the trap is visible in plain sight and shouldn't be dangerous as long as they stay careful. As he steps ahead, a dagger chain hanging from the roof starts moving around quickly. He sees the weapon near him, and he gets scared. However, he stopped there, turned his head, and angrily looked back toward her while she pulled the flower from the sad and stood there holding it, smiling, saying it was pretty. While angrily looking toward her, he tells her to be careful while thinking that idiot, this isn't the moment to be relaxed, but he has to be patient. As he stood there, he looked toward her. Meanwhile, an explosion occurred at his back, and he fell away, holding his dagger. He angrily looks toward her and clenches his teeth while she, with a cute face eating bananas, says she is hungry. After this, she notices another flower and tries to pull it to say Yaoganwu, "It's another there." He stands ahead angrily, looks toward her, and stays silent. Meanwhile, another trap, a chain weapon, quickly moves toward him and attacks him while he looks toward her. However, the explosion occurred there, and he sat on the distorted ground, shouting at her Euphemina to be reasonable how many times. Then he sits there furiously looking toward her, asking if he has to say these are traps. He angrily looked toward her, and she stood there sadly, saying they needed to activate them in advance to proceed safely. In the first place, this is an additional task. Does she have to listen to him as they are both talking? Meanwhile, the guard from the back side of the stairs arrives there and stands far at them, shout, "Found them, they are over there." Irina turned her head and looked toward the guards, and he sat there, also fearfully looking toward the guards. As she stood looking toward the guard, he hurriedly jumped down from that distorted ground due to the explosion. She sees him jumping down. She shouts, asking where he is going, and he, while jumping down, replies this is the fastest way to get downstairs. He will leave that guard to her, and he sits there looking up toward her, saying he doesn't even have armor and can't fight them. Wipe them out with a flame spell and something. He will find Hiroi while the guard steps toward her, saying get them, and she fearfully looks toward the guards moving toward her and says such a selfish guy he is. However, she attacks the guards with her flame spell, saying they are toast if she uses fire in this closed space. Then she abuses them, and he sits there downside, looking up toward the hole, asking that she just help him out until the end. After this, he gets up and steps ahead, thinking a duplicator can duplicate anyone's skills. Normally, the greatest flaw of powerful magic spells is the long casting time. Then he ran away thinking that she was a magician who could cast those instantly that cheat well. Thanks to that, he didn't have to worry about her watching him back. However, on the upside, she attacks the guards with her Frost Queen, breathes and freezes them all, and then stands up. She sighs, saying they keep coming no matter how many she defeats. After this, she created the flame ball in her hand and attacked them, thinking it would be nice to use the wide-range flame spells, but she would explode along with them. However, she creates her swirl spell, assuming 11 spells are left from Pyro's quest, and she won't lose to mere guards, but the problem is amongst all those guards. She doesn't see the 5 Knights of Winston. Meanwhile, hundreds of guards keep moving toward her to kill her. As the guards were in their armor, 2 guards stood among them, talking with each other. One of them said that one of her companions had escaped. Separate the group and chase him, and the other guard replies yes. However, they all run toward her to attack her, and she uses her sword of light magic to kill many of them. Furthermore, a guard stands there looking toward Irina and says this wench will she resist until the end. She attacks them with her swirl magic and throws fire toward them, thinking, for now, keep his promise. Now, 10 spells remain despite her limit, so hurry up, Yaoganwu. On the other side, Hiryo in the dungeon cell shouts, thinking 50 hours have passed in real life. Somebody save him. He is at his limit, and he can't do this anymore. As soon as he called, Yaoganwu stood there to turn his head, thinking it was Hiryo's voice. After this, he runs from there and turns to the other side of the wall, thinking over there. Then he clenches and abuses Hiryo, thinking of getting him involved in all this. Leo stands above him as soon as he turns, holding his sword. Yaogu gets scared, thinking he won't since he sees him. However, Leo shouts and takes out his sword, calling him from earlier, and he is Leo, the Knight of Winston. Then he swings his sword and points it toward Yaogu, saying he has heard of his prison break. If he was working with Hiryo, he knew he would come there. Looking toward him, Yaogu smirked, thinking a knight is at least level 180. What does he do now? Youngwoo stands there angrily and looks toward Leo, asking if he gained some balls. They were all bark and no bite earlier. Leo angrily points his sword toward him, and when he sees that his mouth is healthy, he abuses Yaogu. Then he jumps to attack Yaogu, saying he shall kill him. Be grateful. Yaogu also takes out his dagger and points it toward him in return, thinking, did he provoke him too much while standing there? Striking his dagger, he shouts Blacksmith Rage Quick Movement. However, a bright red aura emerges from the dagger and Yaogu's body, and he calls. Also, his eyes turn red due to anger. Meanwhile, he gets the notification that his attack power and speed have increased greatly for 20 seconds. His agility and evasion rate greatly improved for 1 minute, and he stood there holding his sword, thinking he would have to face him. Leo jumped toward him to attack, and he stood there before him, while the red aura emerged from his body. Leo tries to stab his sword in his chest, but in time hits his sword with his dagger, jumps backwards, and saves himself. Thinking that already he is extremely fast, he barely blocks it. Without this dagger's quick movement, he would have been finished. However, Leo again strikes his sword, shouting, insulting, and blocking his attack. A mere blacksmith dares to hurt his pride. Leo shouts he shall be angered no more with his fatal flame sword. He shall die while an aura like fire comes out of his body. However, he attacks Yaogu with his flame sword and falls away. Yaogu gets injured and notified that he has suffered 17,000 plus damages since his health has reached the lowest possible amount. A legend that doesn't die easily has activated. He will resist all attacks for 5 seconds. Youngwoo drinks his potion bottle, thinking about its unbelievable power and his need for a potion. The flame storm spread everywhere, and Leo stood before him with his sword lying on the floor. Sees this, Youngwoo stands there and looks toward him, asking if he should stop. Meanwhile, Leo's body starts to disappear, and he abuses Youngwoo. He stood there looking toward Leo while Arena shouted far, thinking if she used fire in this closed space, they would be toast, he scumbled. While Youngwoo stands there, he surprisingly thinks of a dust explosion. Meanwhile, Leo's body starts to burn, and little particles of fire come out of his body. He shouts, asking Yaogu what he did to him, and Youngwoo wipes his sweat and, replaying it's a difference in skills and what else, and then Leo dies. Yaogu stands and gets the notification that he has defeated a knight. Winston, the title Knight Slayer, has been acquired. He obtained the prison key, had level N, and is currently at level 45. Yaogu excitedly cheers up. On the other side, Hiryo was in a dungeon cell. Suddenly sunlight fell on his hand from the door side. The door opened a little, and sunlight shone on his eyes, and he put his hand over his eyes. Asking who he is, Yaogu opens the door and enters. He plans to punch him, but he looks like he is at the death's door. Hiryo looks toward Yaogu and surprisingly says he is Khan's as he is about to complete his sentence. He gets the message that his quest has cleared. He has acquired the second-class Apostle of Justice partner. The courage stat has been opened, the skill sacrifice has been generated, and he has earned the title of one who overcomes hardships. And for him, a strong will has been developed. Hiryo, with the ad face, looks up toward Yaogu, saying that he is his savior. Yaogu replies yes, and he gets the notification that his quest is cleared. He has acquired the title Apostle of Justice, and the courage stat has been opened, all stat plus 10. The skill of unbreakable justice has been generated, his reputation in Winston has peaked, and he has maximum affinity with the Winston residents. Youngwoo, reading that notification, gets excited and smiles, and then Hiryo gets up, calling Yaogu's name. Yaogu asks what Hiryo is bending before him, thinking no matter who it is, as long as he helps him end this quest, his loyalty is his. Hiryo, sitting there before Yaogu heading down, replies he is Dumalunbatter, a descendant of the Blue Wolf. He, bearing down with closed eyes, says that by putting the name of Apostle of Justice's partner on the line, he shall follow him and repay this debt. Yeonwoo surprisingly looks toward him, thinking about what's wrong with him. He loses his mind. The duplicator can copy skills and gain the benefits of all classes. It can be seen as the most useful class out of them all. They can defeat a boss alone and become a one-person army with the correct combination of skills. However, they can only duplicate 3 skills daily, and each skill has a single use. They only have 9 basic skills, and they are all combat-oriented. Finally, the duplicator needs better physical abilities. Considering these, a duplicator with a large supply of skills can become the strongest. But once the skills are all set up, Euphemina will be at her weakest state. However, soldiers in large numbers attack Euphemina, and she defeats almost 100 of them, while that underground area is surrounded by fire and magic. She killed hundreds of soldiers alone, and then more soldiers holding their swords and shields gathered around her. She uses her swirl magic to create the swirling storm with her hand and looks at them all angrily. As she stands there creating her magic, the soldier head, one of the main men of Valmont, looks toward her, saying incredibly, she defeated hundreds of soldiers on her own. She stands there looking at soldiers around, pointing their weapons toward her, and thinking that elite knights are still left. She has used almost all of her skills, but thanks to that, they will approach her with care. Then she remembered the time when Yeonwoo jumped down in the hole, saying this was the fastest way to get downstairs, and she thought there was a huge explosion earlier. Seeing how he hadn't come back yet, Yeonwoo might have died. After this, she stood there clenching her teeth, thinking no, even if he managed to rescue Hiryo, he would come back there to help her. Meanwhile, one of the soldiers looking toward his companion asks what they should do if that Yeonwoo guy escapes, and the other one replies, "The Lord's bodyguards are still upstairs but need to end things there." Then he looks toward Euphemina, saying this is disgraceful, but let's cooperate and finish things quickly. She also angrily looks toward them, thinking she can't hold on more than this. She is tired and her magic is not working anymore. Suddenly, she remembered the 3 spells she had left were of fire attributes, and she would kill herself if she used those in this enclosed space. However, they jumped to attack her with their sword, shouting to get her, but as soon as one of them struck his sword at her, she sat down, and the sword passed over her. While sitting down, she thinks she shouldn't have trusted him. She shouldn't have gotten too involved. Meanwhile, the guard with black hair jumps to attack her with his sword, and she looks toward him, thinking of a prince's attack. With her magic, she creates the shelter, thinking that she needs to use a basic skill at least, and the throws throw her magic arrow toward them. But before she attacks them, they attack her and fall her away. She falls there on the ground and heads down before them. The guard with orange hair stands before her with his companion. He laughed, asking if she was out of power. He was stressed out for nothing, so he raised his voice and looked angrily at her. This is payback for those 500 souls. However, the guard with orange hair moves toward her and swings his sword at her, and then he brings his sword to her head and stands in front of him. The guard strikes his sword to attack her, asking for no hard feelings, okay? She heads up, looks toward him, and clenches her teeth, thinking this isn't over yet. There is a 50% chance. The sword tip was in front of her eyes, and she clenched her teeth, thinking although she had finished, she was unlucky. While looking up, she creates rolling dice magic with her hand, and the notification appears if the target is herself and an ally. 4 higher will have a beneficial effect, and 3 lower will have a harmful impact. If the target is an enemy, 3 and lower will have a beneficial impact, and 4 higher will have a detrimental effect. As the soldier stands there to attack her with his sword, Yeonwoo gets there from behind, asking him if self-proclaimed righteous knights are ganging up on a shameless girl. However, the guard, pointing his sword at Euphemina, angrily looks toward Yeonwoo. As Euphemina sits on the ground and sees him there, she sighs and smiles. Hiryo also stands at Yeonwoo's back with him, and Euphemina looks toward him, smiling, saying he has finally come and cursing him in her head. He should have come faster. The 2 guards' heads stand aside from the guard with orange hairs. Looking toward Yeonwoo, one of them angrily says if he is there, then don't tell him. The other one stands beside him and completes his sentence, asking Leo if the Northern Nova was defeated. Yeonwoo, looking toward them angrily, says he doesn't know anything about a move, but he got rid of a swine called Leo. One-on-one fair and square, Yeonwoo ahead steps toward them, saying impossible. Then he laughed, asking them if they thought they could injure a single strand of his hair. Looking toward Yeonwoo, Euphemina believes that when the opponent's level is higher by 30 or more, NPCs instinctively recoil. They are falling back so much. Just how high is his level? Hearing this, the guard with orange hair stands there, clenches his teeth, and fist abuses Yaoganwu, saying he is only a lowly blacksmith. One of his companions stood behind him and, putting his hand on the guard with orange hair's shoulder, said, "Wait, they need to be wary." Saying this, he is looking at Yaoganwu coming toward them and seeing how he defeated Leo. He is confident in himself. He is someone they need to be wary of. Yaoganwu angrily looks toward them and smiles, saying get out of his way before they end up like Leo. However, the guards angrily look toward Yaoganwu and take out their swords to attack him while Hiryo stands behind Yaoganwu, thinking he originally seemed so pathetic. But now, even those knights are afraid of him. He must have an extremely high level. Youngwoo truly is an incredible person. While Yaoganwu stands there smiling, looking toward the guards. Thinking this feels good, he dares them to come at them. They are all sent flying by Euphemina, not by him. One of the guards steps toward Yaoganwu, holding his sword, saying don't move. They will kill him if he takes another step. Meanwhile, the guard looks back toward the stairs and tells his companions this is bad. They got pushed back to the stairs. Meanwhile, the other guard, pointing his sword toward Yaoganwu, replies no more. A mere jailbreaker can't disgrace them. Hearing this, Yaoganwu laughs, asking if that is so, and then he says Euphemina stands beside him and looks at him. Surprisingly, she calls her. As she looked toward him, he told her to show them what she was made of, shoot her magic, and eradicate them. Euphemina smiled, answering him right now. She couldn't, so she asked him why he didn't do it himself. As soon as she says this, he blankly looks toward her and gets speechless, and after a minute, he fearfully replies that he can't beat them. Euphemina also fearfully looks toward him, asking if he defeats a knight on his own, just do it. Meanwhile, the guards holding their swords run toward Yaoganwu to kill him, and he looks back toward the guards coming toward him, clenches his teeth, replaying Euphemina, no, that's not. However, one guard jumps toward Yaoganwu, shouting don't he dare ignore them. He will destroy him and his terrorists. The guard extends his sword to stab it in Yaoganwu's chest and sees the sword near him. He fearfully thinks so fast, knights are strong. Then he asked himself in his head if he had provoked them too much as the sword was about to get stabbed in Yaoganwu's chest. Meanwhile, Hiryo rushes to save him, and the sword hits him in the chest. However, the bright light came out of the sword. Yaoganwu stood behind Hiryo's back, shouting and calling Hiryo. Meanwhile, the sword falls, and the guard sits there holding his hand, screaming in pain. Sees Yaoganwu, surprisingly looking, and asks how he is all right now, while Hiryo stands above him and smiles. Also, the bright light emerges from Hiryo's armor, and he replies, Yaoganwu, yes, he is fine, no problem whatsoever. Hiryo, looking toward Youngwoo, smiled and got the notification that Strong would resist any attack for 10 seconds. After using the skill, its magic costs 200, and it will get the time of 2 hours to cool down. And then, looking toward Youngwoo, he smiled, thinking it was the priceless skill he received after enduring that hellish trial. Euphemina stands, and then surprisingly asks Hiryo what, but how did he block a knight's sword with his bare body? Youngwoo stands ahead of her, looking toward Hiryo. She replies that she has no idea. He doesn't know him too well either. However, Hiryo stands ahead of Youngwoo and Euphemina, and he turns his head to look toward them both and says the two of them should run away. Youngwoo stands behind him and asks what he will do. Also, the guards holding their swords stand before them. Hiri replies that he will hold them back while thinking since he has decided to repay this debt his whole life. Hearing this, Euphemina asks Hiryo what he can do by himself while Youngwoo turns and steps ahead to run, then stops and smiles, smiling, let's go, Euphemina, volunteered himself. However, Youngwoo, looking toward Hiryo, says to hold on for as long as he can, and Euphemina stands there and says to let them meet again if the opportunity comes. While Hiryo stands there, looks toward them both, smiles and waves his hand. Seeing Yaoganwu running away, the guard holding their sword runs toward him, saying they won't let him escape so easily. At the same time, husbands ahead, open H and stop them, answering the impossible. Hiryo raises his voice by activating his orator's skillful spiteful tongue. He is the one who won't let them escape, and then he abuses them. Meanwhile, something starts happening in the guards' bodies, and they shout, asking what is happening to them. Meanwhile, Hiryo gets the notification that all his opponent's stats have decreased, and then Hiryo clenched his fist, thinking now his new skill, and then he stared at them, thinking taste this. Then he screams and uses his unbreakable skill, Justice, to attack and stack them with his magic. However, the notification appears that Unbreakable Justice deals 300% of his physical attack power. He creates the magic shield, a bright light spread everywhere there, and the guards silently stand there in that light. He punches them together with his magic. His punch does not affect them as soon as he hits them. He stands before the guards and extends his hand as he thinks it is a useless skill for a feeble orator like him. After this, he sits before them, and his magic disappears while the guards stand before him and abuse him. One of them raises his voice, asking if he is bluffing, and the other one, his companion, angrily says tie him up and lock him in solitary confinement. As he sits before them on the ground, he heads down, thinking that since the quest is finished, he can log out without repercussions, and it seems like Winston's city lord is finished. The guards tied his hand to the back with a rope, and he sat there, head down, smiling, thinking 50 hours now, and could finally rest. He has done everything he can, Yaoganwu. He wishes him good fortune. However, both Yaoganwu and Euphemia keep running. They ascend the stairs rashly and come out of the castle. As soon as Yaoganwu went out of the castle, he cheered up excitedly that they escaped successfully, while Euphemia stood behind him and angrily looked toward him, telling shut it. They were still in the middle of enemy territory. Euphemia, looking toward the castle's main door, thinks they still need to escape from the castle, and if the knights downstairs start cooperating with the Lord's bodyguards, things can get difficult. On the one hand, she was worried, while on the other hand, Yaoganwu was very excited that they came out of the dungeon cell. He is lying on the grass, excitedly blushing and moving, saying the air is so pure and nice and there is greenery. She angrily looked toward him and clenched her teeth, and then she grabbed him by his shirt and screamed at him. She told him to shut up. She will kill him if he doesn't listen to her, and he fearfully looks toward her, replaying he understands he is wrong. After this, standing there looking at him, she thinks that this side of him annoys her the most. This attitude of messing with her, even though he has a higher class than her. Yaoganwu points ahead with an innocent face, asking her if those guys are their enemies. She shakes her head and nods yes. However, the Lord of Winston Baron Low and his bodyguard arrive, and they angrily step toward them. Looking toward Yaoganwu and Euphemia, he shouts at criminals, then the Lord stare them, asking them to think that all those soldiers and knights were defeated. Yaoganwu closes his eyes and tells her it is because she was making such a ruckus, and she shouts at him, answering he is the one who was being loud. The Lord looked toward them both sweaty, thinking if he let them get away, he wouldn't be able to stop the citizen from reporting to Erlstein. If that happens, he is finished, and then raises his voice, and order his guards to kill those unforgivable sinners. They both stand before the dungeon door, and Yaoganwu fearfully looks toward her and says get rid of them. She can do it right. She turns her head angrily, looks toward him, and stays silent. Then she clenches her teeth, thinking, will he seriously act weak until the end? Patience, girl, patience. However, she creates her magic swirl with her hand, thinking since they are not in an enclosed area, she can now blow them up as much as she wants. After this, she threw the Demon King's tail fire toward them, and her magic injured and fell the guard far away. As she did her magic, the bright light spread everywhere. The light was so bright that even Yaoganwu stood beside her and put his arms on his face. She attacks the Lord and his guard with her Demon King's tail fire and throws them away. The Lord shouts, saying such power. After some time, the Lord sat